Welcome back to Real Estate 101. Today we're going to continue our discussion on home renovations and talk a little bit about lowering your basement floor. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Daniel Ott of White Willow Design. Dan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, Dan. So why would somebody want to lower their basement floor?
Well, really, it comes down to one thing. They need more headroom. But then the question is, why do people want more headroom? And there's a variety of reasons for that. We've done a few basements for clients who want to make a man cave down there, right? And we've done quite a few basements, more so though, for basement apartments, which legally is a duplex conversion. And what happens is the building code has a minimum height that's needed to be called livable space. So we need to lower the basement floor to get the height difference between the top of slab and the underside of the joist to be that minimum distance.
Okay, so how far can you lower a basement floor?
Really, you can go as far as you need to or you want to, but
provided you pull permits in there.
Exactly. But there's a whole lot of, the farther down you go, the harder it gets, and there's a whole bunch of other things that get involved with that.
Okay, so how do you go about starting a project like that?
Well, you're going to take your concrete floor out, the existing one. You're going to take the gravel out that's underneath that, and then you're going to dig out the dirt that's underneath that as far as you need to go. And what you're going to do is you're going to dig the dirt to a level that's 8 to 10 inches lower than where you want the end floor height to be. Mm-hmm. And then you fill in 5 to 6 inches of gravel, and then you do 3 to 4 inches of concrete floor again. And that happens no matter what you do, but the easiest floor drops are when that's all you have to do, and the top of that slab ends up being at the same height as the top of the footing.
All right. So, I mean, I guess that makes it sound simple in a sense. There's got to be, yeah. I mean, but there's got to be something or things that make it not so easy.
For sure. So if we're only dropping the floor, say 6 inches, that's something we can do. But if we have to drop the floor a couple feet or more, then we talk about more difficult ways to do that. So usually when the layperson hears, oh, I need to lower my basement floor, the word underpinning comes to mind.
Right.
And people might not understand what that means, but everyone's got this horrible feeling in the gut of their stomach when they hear underpinning. And it's true. So what underpinning is essentially removing the footings underneath your wall, removing the dirt underneath where that was, pouring new footings, and filling in the void. But as you can imagine, if you did that all at once, as you're digging the dirt out, the house is sinking with it.
Right.
So we can only do sections at a time. So typically it's done about 4 foot section, where you remove the footings and you dig down, and then you leave 4 feet, and then you do another 4 foot section where you remove everything, and then you do that all the way around, and then you build where those voids are, and then you remove the other sections and build those. But even as I say all that, it sounds labor intensive. And as I've said numerous times, the most expensive thing in construction is the labor. So if something's labor extensive, it's going to cost a lot more. Mm-hmm. So this is one of the reasons why people get horrified about underpinning. The other thing is there's a whole lot of engineering involved in that. So all of this means much higher costs.
All right, so I've also heard the term bench footing.
Yes, and this is my favorite way of doing it. It's much more cost effective. There's a lot less engineering involved, which also makes it more cost effective. But essentially, if this is the outside of the house and this is the inside, we have our existing wall footing, and we dig down on a 45-degree angle. And so weight disbursement is done through a 45-degree angle downwards. So if we dig at that 45-degree angle all the way around, we haven't disturbed any of the earth that's actually holding up the existing house.
Right.
And so we can do the whole thing at once, which makes it much more efficient, which again is more cost effective. And at the bottom of wherever we want to go, so if we want to go down 12 inches, then we go out 12 inches as well, and we pour another footing, a new footing, and then we build a wall and we fill all that with concrete to stop that 45-degree angle of dirt from ever moving away in the future and undermining the existing footing. So what happens is you've now created a bench all the way around. The drawback to this is that the further down you have to go, the further in you have to come as well. So at 12 inches or so, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. So I would suggest doing this up to about 2 feet. You go down 2 feet, you also come in 2 feet. But if we have to do 3 feet, then we're making our basement a lot smaller. So the usable space has become too small to really use. If your width of your basement is 15 feet and we have to come in 3 feet on each side, we're left with a 9-foot usable space in the basement. And it doesn't make sense. So in that instance, I would suggest going to a full-scale underpinning. But 2 feet and less, definitely a bench footing is the way to go.
All right, so there's got to be things you run into when you're digging that make this harder.
Yes. If we're only doing up to, say, 12 inches, we can probably get away with not having to touch too much stuff. But if we start getting deeper, we run into things like the plumbing drains. You're going to have a floor drain in the middle of your floor somewhere by your furnace. Your main plumbing stack goes down. And chances are, most often, it doesn't go down and then exit straight out the house. It goes across the basement, of course, in some weird route. And when we dig too far down, that's also going to be in the middle of the air. So we have to reroute that sort of thing. Also doing with water, we have the water main. So the water main comes up out of the floor somewhere and probably just sneaks under the footings. So if we go too far down, it ends up being in the middle of the wall instead of at the floor. Not a big deal, but it's something you have to deal with. One of the bigger ones is all the appliances. So your furnace and your water heater. If you're going to drop the whole floor, then those have to be uninstalled and then reinstalled again later at a lower level. What I prefer to do is actually leave the utility room at the same height that it was. Now, depending on how far down we have to go, but if we can keep it at the same height that it was already existing, and we do a bench footing around that room, then we don't have to uninstall and reinstall those appliances, because that could be several thousands of dollars just to do that.
All right, so, I mean, you have the floor open. Is there something maybe extra that you should do while you've got the floor open?
Absolutely. I highly recommend doing a weeping tile system on the inside of the house.
On the inside?
Yes. There might be one on the outside.
Right.
If the house is old enough, it's going to be probably full of dirt and silt and sand over the years. So let's help that system out by putting one on the inside as well. And we can talk a whole bunch about that sort of stuff in different ways, but we don't just have to do it around the perimeter, but we can also do it in the middle of the floor. We did a house once a few years ago where basically it's in the middle of the downwards run on the escarpment somewhere. So when the floor, kind of in the middle,
right? Okay.
So there's like say a whole neighborhood above and there's a whole neighborhood below yet. But when we had the floor open and we had a heavy rainstorm, the amount of water running through that floor was just astronomical. So we put a whole weeping tile system in underneath that entire floor, and that would help take care of a lot of the water that would be running underneath the house, because now we're creating void pipes where that water can run.
Right.
And because if we don't take care of that water, we might start getting upheaval on the basement floor after a little while.
Right. Okay. So for a project like this, what does it typically cost?
Typically, that's a hard one. I mean, we went through a bunch of different scenarios here. There's easy ways to do it and hard ways to do it, and there's more cost-effective ways to do it. If you're going to be doing underpinning, you're going to be $40,000-$50,000 or more for a medium-sized basement. And even if you're going to get away with not even having to do a bench footing, but we're just dropping it to the level of the footings, I would suggest you budget at least $10,000 to do that.
All right, Dan, for anybody watching and listening who may want to get in touch, how can they reach you?
Well, they can call me directly, 905-220-9419, or email info@whitewillowdesign.ca.
All right, Dan, great stuff. Thanks for coming on today's show.
Thanks, Joe.
So there you have it. If you're looking for more information on home renovations, get in contact with Daniel Ott at White Willow Design. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, comment, and share our videos. I'm Joe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.